Hi, everyone. Nadine Briggs here from Simply Social Kids. Today, I want to talk to you about just some signs you would look for if you're considering or you're not sure if your child or your teen could use some social skills help. And whether it's our program or another program, just some things for you to consider as to whether or not it's time to get some help with this. I mean, certainly if your child is somewhat socially awkward, or if your child has had social difficulties for a good part of their lives. Maybe they're able to make friends, but they can't keep them, or maybe when you see them socialize, there's just some stuff that happens, and you're just kind of like, oh gosh, they're missing what's going on there. Or they're at an ice cream social and they're away from everybody else. They're not even part of the group. There's different signs I'm sure you as parents have picked up on. There comes that point where you're like, is this a point where I really should get them help or not? Or are they okay? Will they figure it out on their own? So generally, when we think about whether or not they need social skills help, are they lonely? Are they sad? Are they just not connecting with other people, regardless of what they're in, whether it's Cub Scouts or sporting team or at school or whatever it is you're doing, maybe the church that you're affiliated with, whatever it is, if they're just not connecting with other people. It's incredibly important, not only for friendship and for fun and all the things that we think about when we think about friends, but also when they do group work together, when they start to, maybe they're in some kind of club or some team, they need to get along with people there. When they start to work, chances are their first job, their manager will probably be another high school kid or somebody fresh out of high school who doesn't have a lot of managerial experience, and they'll have to deal with interacting with that person and coworkers. Depending what they do outside of high school, once they leave high school, they might end up going to the military, or maybe they go to a trade school, or maybe they go straight to a work environment, or maybe college where they're going to live in a dorm. All of those scenarios require you to get along with other people and to understand the social situations and do well in them. So it's just a skill that they're going to need lifelong, not to mention their overall happiness. There's a research study that I'll link below about social skills and how it leads to happiness. So we'll send that as well. So one of the first ones I want to talk about, I've got 8 for you today. It is certainly not an all-inclusive list, but the first one I want to talk about is misinterpreting social situations. If they're not able to pick up on social cues, or they're misreading what's going on, what they end up doing is they add a lot more negativity to their lives than they would normally have. And let's face it, when they misinterpret, they never misinterpret in the positive, do they? They always misinterpret in the negative. Like somebody is judging them, somebody doesn't like them, someone's saying bad things about them, someone's laughing and they're laughing at them. There's a lot of different things where people misinterpret what's going on. And they're not only are they adding kind of what we always consider to be like more bricks to their backpack. So every time they misinterpret something, just that negativity is just like, oh, there's one thing that happened to me socially that went bad. And they keep kind of gathering up those things. And it's just kind of a big weight that they carry around with them if they're missing out on social cues. And we really want them to be able to understand that and not carry that around. And also, if someone's just using some sarcasm, or maybe they're trying to be funny and they're misinterpreting that as being serious, or that they don't like them, they're missing out on an opportunity to potentially connect to somebody in a friendly way. So that is an important thing for them to understand. And when they're in a social program, certainly in our program, we see that happen in real time, and we're able to intervene and say, hey, I see that you're getting upset by that, but did you realize they were joking, or that was sarcasm? Just to help them understand when it is and even when it isn't, so that they get that piece of socializing. The other one that we see quite a bit, so number 2, is seeking control. A lot of our kids really seek control. They want to do what they want to do when they want to do it in their way. And that mentality around being with others and having that desire to control what's happening is literally the opposite of what friendship is. Friendship is a reciprocal situation where you do what one person wants to do for a little bit, and then that person does what the other person wants to do for a little bit. Or even in conversation, we'll talk about something that I'm interested in with one of my friends, and then I'll listen to what they're interested in. Might not be the same things, but we have to have that back and forth reciprocal nature. If I said, I only want to talk about what I want to talk about, I only want to see the movies I want to see, I only want to go to the restaurants that I want to go to, then people are going to tire of that pretty quickly and say, I don't really want to hang out with her. She only wants to do the things that she wants to do, and there's no consideration for my my needs, my ideas, my opinions, my preferences, and things like that. So it's incredibly important that kids do understand the nature of friendship, and then that's a piece of it. And so that would be certainly signal number two that your child or teen might need some social skills help. The third one is just they're just not getting invited anywhere. That's kind of an obvious one, but that's something that is an issue. If they're not getting invited to birthday parties, they're not being asked to go to the movies, they're not even being asked to have other, join other people at lunch or sit with them or hang out with them at recess or whatever, then they're just not being included in another group. And we really want them to be somebody that others think of as a friend, and that they want to include them in that group. They want to get those invitations. I will tell you though that if I ask teenagers, oh, what do you do on the weekends, right? They'll say, oh, nobody ever asked me to do anything. And if I say, well, how many people did you contact to do something this weekend? Almost 100% of the time they say no one. So it's one of those things where they expect people to come to them, but they don't put the invitation out to other people to do things. And that's a big issue. So it's one thing to not have invitations. It's also another thing when you're not putting invitations out there. And I know that's scary and you're risking being rejected and all of that. But those are some of the things that we would encourage and help with. In fact, I do that all the time in my center. What I'll do is I'll if I see a little friendship starting to spark, I'll ask the one kid, hey, do you think you'd want to hang out with so-and-so at any point? Would you want to spend some time outside of the group? And then I'll ask the other kid, do you want to hang out with this person at any point outside of the group? And once I know I have kind of the buy-in between the two, if they're older, then I'll share, hey, I think they would want to hang out with you too. If they're younger, they're elementary school kids, I will ask each of the parents if I can share their contact information so that they can get those kids together outside of the group. Because I think that that's another way for them to forge that friendship, is to do it outside of the setting where they get the support. Okay, number 4 is the lack of conversation skills. So kids today really, really, really have a hard time just making conversation with one another. Part of that is also that not understanding that what really the core of friendship is, that we talk about what we like to talk about if the other person is interested, and they should gauge that interest before they start talking. But we also have to listen to what other people are interested in, even if it's not our favorite thing. Kids don't understand that at all. And a lot of times when they talk to people, it's more of a monologue for a lot of the kids we work with, where they want to talk about the thing that they enjoy, but it's not a dialogue. They're not looking for feedback from somebody else. They're not asking for feedback. They don't necessarily want feedback. They just want to talk about the thing that they want to talk about. But conversation skills are the way to friendship. Conversation creates connection. If we don't know about other people and those other people don't know about us, we don't know what we have in common if we're not talking to each other. So we're not able to see, is there a friend connection or isn't there a friend connection? What sorts of things would we do if we ever hung out? And if they're not ever able to really have that conversation and figure that out, then the friendship isn't going to really happen, because there's no basis for them to find those connections if they just simply aren't talking to each other. The fifth one is, I have here negative energy, but it's also just kind of really neutral, like sleepy energy. And I think part of the problem is I have these giant bean bags of floor pillows at Simply Social Kids, which the kids love. And it's a love-hate thing for me, because on one hand, they're super comfortable and the kids love them. And on the other hand, they're super comfortable and the kids love them. So that means that they'll come in and, they'll curl up on the bean bag, but they'll start to feel sleepy or tired. Well, if they feel sleepy or tired, that's not really a good social presence to bring. As we talk about bringing your social self to a social situation, and that means not a negative energy and not a sleepy, tired energy. I mean, certainly if somebody comes in and they're really, their arms folded and they're kind of giving you a grumpy face, I mean, that's not going to really invite people to come over and talk to them and hang out with them. Is it? Like, we don't sit there and say, hey, sign me up. I'd love some more grumpy friends in my life, or some more sleepy friends. It just isn't something that we want. So we want to make sure that they understand, you got to leave whatever happened or whatever has got you sleepy down or whatever outside the door, so that you come to a social setting ready to be friendly and somebody that people want to spend time with. Again, something that's a little bit on the obvious side if you don't have social struggles, but not something that's obvious if you don't have social struggles. kids who just flat out avoid socializing. Okay, so this is number 6, and this is something where they just don't want to go. They don't want to interact, or they're super nervous about it. Kids who have anxiety might feel like they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to go. They're too anxious. They think they're going to be rejected. They'll come up with all kinds of what if scenarios in their head of what if the people aren't nice? What if there's nobody there that I like? What if I'm really embarrassed? Or what if I'm uncomfortable? What if, to the point where they don't do anything. And that is a problem. And that's a problem when they're younger. I see it more as kids get to be older, like middle school, where they'll start to say, I'm just not even going to try anymore because I've tried to make friends with people my whole life. It's just never really gone particularly well for me. So I'm just going to sit in my room and do video games. It's just easier for me to just sit back and do that than to try to go put myself out there at the fear of being rejected. Okay. Number 7 is rigid thinking. And this kind of goes along with the kind of seeking control a little bit, where they're not open to other people's ideas. They're just kind of locked in their own way. There's black and white. There is no room for any gray area. There's right, there's wrong. And, sometimes things are right given certain scenarios. Sometimes they're wrong given other scenarios. But if they have kind of that lockdown, rigid thinking where, you're either right or you're wrong, and I won't listen to your nuance about the idea or your opinion about how to play something, or the fact that you can play things more than one way, like Uno, for example, which is a game that everybody loves at all ages, I think. And that's one of those games where there's actually more than one way to play Uno. And if you have rigid thinking, you're going to think to yourself, this is the way you play Uno, the way I play. The way you play has to be wrong because my way is the only right way. And that's a problem. So we need to make sure that they are learning to be flexible around that in terms of their thinking. And there's lots of different things we do at Simply Social Kids to help them do that. The last one, and certainly not the least, is if your child has been bullied. And I want to say right up front, I'm not blaming the victim here at all. Bullying should not happen, and kids should not bully other kids. But I will tell you that they're the bullies who are sitting there and saying, all right, who am I going to try to pick on today, are going to look for the kids who are going to have the biggest reactions to what they do. If they're trying to upset people, they want to see that they were effective in upsetting people. And the way they do that is they pick on people who are going to be very reactive. And in the book that I co-authored called Bully Busting and Managing Meanies, we talk about, not having a juicy reaction. We actually talk about it about being like an orange, where an orange has kind of that hard rind on the outside with all the juicy stuff on the inside. And we say, don't have a juicy reaction when somebody says something to you, even if you feel it inside. And certainly we want them to feel their feelings, but we don't want to necessarily show those feelings to somebody who's trying to get those feelings out of you. So if someone says something to them and they're super reactive and they react in a very big, juicy way, that bully got what they wanted. So it's kind of like, they just hit the slot machine, right? They just got the payout. That, oh, wow, this kid's going to really freak out whenever I, call him a loser or whatever it is. So I'm going to call him a loser every single day for the rest of the school year because I want to see that reaction, or even a sad reaction. So it does tend to be that the kids that we work with are the ones that tend to get bullied the most because they're going to have the juiciest reactions and they're going to be targets for other reasons because of their social awkwardness. And so those are all things that we really need to consider. And again, not an all exhaustive list, but just really something that we need to think about in terms of like, when is it time? A lot of times around October, November, you'll have parent-teacher conferences with your school. And there's a whole other video around questions to ask, which I'll link here, in terms of the questions you should ask when you go to those parent-teacher conferences. I think a lot of parents, when brand new start of a new school year, you think this is going to be the year. Maybe there's going to be some kids in their class that they make friends with. And I certainly hope that there are. But if they're not, by the time you hit that parent-teacher conference, that might be like, okay, here's another year where here we are, October, November of the school year, enough time for them to form some friendships in the new class or classes, and those aren't happening. That's a red flag that maybe they do need some social skills instruction in order to get better at that. The other thing I'll say about whether or not to join a social skills program is that be careful about allowing your child to make that decision. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this where it's such a shame, where kids who are misinterpreting what's going on, or kids who will let's say they go to a trial group, for example. And this happened fairly recently with someone where you go to a trial group, and in our groups, if there's 60-minute groups, 50 minutes of it is unstructured, in the moment coaching, them hanging out with peers, playing with those peers, and we're coaching them in the moment the entire time. Probably about 10 minutes of that is a structured lesson. The lessons that we do are based on the kids in that group. So if somebody comes in for a trial group, they're not going to necessarily have a lesson that's pertinent to them because they're here for a trial. They're not part of the program yet. And even if they were part of the program, it doesn't mean that that lesson is going to hit on every single person's need every single week. But we are going to get to them through the other 50 minutes of the group of our in the moment coaching. So I had a situation recently where I had somebody come to the group, had a great time, laughing, smiling, burst into song at one point, was having just the time of their life. But the lesson, this person didn't feel was pertinent to them. And so felt, okay, I don't want to go back because I already knew the things that they talked about in the lesson. So therefore, this isn't for me. And the same person is somebody who has been very depressed and sad about not having friends. And honestly, from my perspective, would have really made some nice friends had the person stayed in the program. But it was, a situation where obviously you can't force kids to come do something that they don't want to come do. But I would say if they come to a trial program, again, whether it's mine or somebody else's, and it's not something that they detest, despise, really, really, really hated, right? If they're like, yeah, it was pretty good, or I had yeah, it was fun, but the lesson wasn't really there, or you're getting kind of partial buy-in, try it for a month. I mean, in our program, everyone's different, but our program is a month-to-month commitment. You can do it for 1 month and then stop. So it's not like you've got to sign up for 10 weeks at a time or a full year or anything like that. But it is important to have it be either both your decision or, have some parental influence in there where, they're not able to make their own decisions because they have all these difficulties. There's a part of them that wants to avoid socializing. There's a part of them that feels scared because maybe they've been bullied. Maybe they're bringing a negative energy their first day because they're nervous. Their anxiety is getting in the way. It's a tall order to win someone over in a 60-minute trial. We usually have a pretty good hit rate generally, but that's not something that we can guarantee. So again, a month-to-month commitment, but something that's super, super important for kids to learn these skills in whatever way they're going to learn them, so that when they are doing group work, or they're going to whatever they're doing after high school, if it's college or military or trade school or jobs, they need to be able to get along with people and handle social situations. So I hope you found this helpful. Again, there's a couple links here to some other videos that might be useful to you. But if you like this video, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, and let me know if there's any other topics that you'd like me to do videos about. I'm happy to do so if I hear from you, so just let me know. Thanks so much for listening.